The light in the royal chambers had dimmed to almost nothing. King Xerxes stood alone by the large crystal window that overlooked the capital city of Lumaria. His tall, slender form cast barely any shadow. The natural glow that usually shone from his blue-scaled skin had faded to a dull flicker. This was how grief showed itself among his people. 90 days had passed since the diplomatic shuttle carrying Princess Lyra had disappeared. 90 days of silence. 90 days of hoping against all evidence. The princess, his only daughter and heir to the Lumarian Empire, was gone. Xerxes pressed a six-fingered hand against the cool crystal. Below, the city's towers sparkled with the bioluminescent light of millions of his subjects. But many of those lights had dimmed too. The entire empire mourned with him. "Your Majesty," a voice called softly from the doorway. "The High Council awaits your presence." Xerxes did not turn. "Tell them I will join shortly, Marin." His advisor stepped into the room, the patterns of concern clear in the light rippling across his face. They wished to discuss the human question. Again, the king closed his eyes. Of course they did. The warhawks in his council had been pushing for action since the day Lyra's shuttle vanished near the human border. They were convinced humans were responsible, despite the lack of evidence. "There is still no proof of human involvement," Xerxes said. "Absence of proof is not proof of absence, my king," Marin replied, repeating the phrase that had become the war faction's favorite saying. The shuttle's last known position was near their mining outpost. Their ships were detected in the region, as were ships from a dozen other species. Xerxes finally turned from the window. "I will not rush to war on suspicion alone." Marin bowed his head. "As you wish, but the people grow restless. They demand justice for the princess." Justice. What a simple word for such a complicated thing. What justice could there be for a father who had lost his child? Would war bring her back? Would the deaths of thousands of humans fill the empty space in the palace where Lyra's light once shone? Xerxes followed Marin through the long, curved hallways of the palace. Servants and guards bowed as he passed, their skin patterns showing sympathy and respect. The royal guards that flanked him wore ceremonial armor that usually glowed with bright patterns of protection and strength. Today, those patterns were muted in shared grief. The doors to the council chamber opened silently. Inside, 12 council members rose from their seats around a circular table made of the same crystal as the palace windows. At the center of the table, a hologram showed the sector of space where Lyra's shuttle had last been seen. "My king," they said in unison, their voices a practiced harmony. Xerxes took his place at the head of the table. "Let us begin." Council leader Drav spoke first. "Your Majesty, it has been 90 days. According to our traditions, we must soon acknowledge what we all know to be true. The formal mourning ceremony. Once performed, it would be an official declaration that Princess Lyra was considered dead." Something inside Xerxes rebelled at the thought. "We should wait longer," he said. "Your Majesty," said Council Member Vex, the most vocal of the Warhawks, "I speak with the deepest respect, but we cannot delay this forever. And once we formally acknowledge her passing, we must address its cause." "We do not know the cause," Xerxes reminded him. "The humans," Vex began, "have denied any involvement," finished Council Member Ilya, one of the few voices of moderation. "Their diplomatic channels remain open. They have even offered to help in the search." "A clever tactic to hide their guilt," Vex countered. His skin flashed with patterns of suspicion and anger. "They are a young species, barely a century into space travel, yet they push at every border, mine every asteroid, and question every established rule. Their ambition knows no bounds?" Xerxes listened as the council fell into the same argument they had been having for weeks. The war faction saw humans as dangerous, unpredictable. The peace faction saw them as potential allies, different but valuable. Both sides claimed to know what Princess Lyra would have wanted. The truth was, Lyra had been fascinated by humans. She had studied their history, their cultures, their strange way of solving problems without the psychic abilities that Lumarians took for granted. She had volunteered for the diplomatic mission partly to learn more about them. Enough, Zarek said finally, and the room fell silent. I will agree to the morning ceremony. It will be held in 7 days. Relief showed in the light patterns of many council members. This was the first step toward moving forward. To war or peace remained to be seen. But, the king continued, I will not decide our response to her loss until after we have properly honored her life. Is that understood? The council members bowed their heads in agreement. It was a compromise that would hold them for now. After the council meeting ended, Xerxes made his way to Lyra's chambers. He had avoided this place since her disappearance, but with the morning ceremony approaching, he needed to select items for the ritual. The room was exactly as she had left it. Books from Earth sat on her desk, physical books, an oddity that Lyra had loved about human culture. Models of human spacecraft hung from the ceiling alongside Lumarian ships. Her collection of Earth plants grew under special lights that simulated. Their son, Xerxes, picked up a small device from her bedside table. It was a music player from Earth. He pressed a button, and strange human music filled the room. Lyra had been learning to play these songs on Lumarian instruments. Now he would never hear her version. A soft knock at the door interrupted his thoughts. It was Marin again. I'm sorry to disturb you, Your Majesty, but there is something you should see. Xerxes followed his advisor to the observatory tower. The chief astronomer bowed as they entered. We've detected unusual activity at the edge of the Vex Nebula, the astronomer said, bringing up a display. Energy signatures that don't match any known species. Xerxes studied the readings. Could it be related to Lyra's shuttle? It's impossible to say, Your Majesty, the astronomer admitted. But these readings, they're like nothing in our records. For the first time in 90 days, Xerxes felt something besides grief. A tiny spark of hope flickered in his chest, making the patterns on his skin brighten just slightly. Keep monitoring, he ordered, and tell no one else of this. As he left the observatory, Xerxes looked up at the night sky. Somewhere out there was the answer to what had happened to his daughter, and despite what the council wanted, he would not rest until he found it, even if it meant dealing with humans. Ryan Collins wiped sweat from his forehead as he finished organizing the medical supplies. The small outpost on Frontier Station 9 was understaffed and overworked. As the only combat medic assigned to this remote human colony, Ryan spent most days treating minor injuries and running tests on soil samples. It was quiet work, far from the chaos he had known during the border skirmishes 3 years ago. He preferred it this way. The quiet helped keep the memories at bay, memories of the attack on Medical Station Bravo, where half his unit died while he could only watch. The nightmares still came, but less often now. Collins, you're needed in the come room, called Alan, the station's technician, through the intercom. Something tripped the perimeter sensors on the east ridge. Ryan grabbed his medical kit and headed toward the main building. The east ridge was mostly uninhabited, just rocks and the strange purple vegetation that covered much of this moon. Probably just another herd of the deer-like creatures that roamed the area. When he reached the come room, he found Alan and Kate, the station commander, staring at the monitor. What is it? Ryan asked. Kate pointed to a heat signature moving across the screen. Too big for local wildlife. Too small for a standard ship. It's descending fast, might be an escape pod. Ryan felt his heart rate increase. Survivors? One life sign, but it's strange, Alan said, adjusting the sensors. Not. Reading as human, Kate turned to Ryan. Suit up. If someone's hurt out there, they'll need you. I'll send Pete and Liz as security. 20 minutes later, Ryan was hiking up the ridge with Pete and Liz flanking him, pulse rifles ready. The three of them wore the standard lightweight environmental suits. The air on this moon was breathable, but protocol required protection when approaching unknown craft. They spotted the crash site from half a mile away. A small pod, maybe 15 feet long, had carved a path through the purple vegetation before coming to rest against a boulder. The design was unlike anything Ryan had seen before, not human, but not matching any known alien ships either. Approach. With caution, Liz said, raising her rifle. Could be a trap. Ryan nodded but kept his focus on the pod. His scanner showed the life sign was weakening. Someone's dying in there. We need to move. They reached the pod and found what looked like a door on one side. No obvious controls or handles were visible. How do we get in? Pete asked, examining the smooth metal surface. Ryan placed his hand against the door, feeling for any seam or panel. To his surprise, the material seemed to react to his touch, growing warm and slightly yielding. It's responding to me, he said, before Pete or Liz could comment. The door dissolved inward, revealing the pod's interior. A thick, sweet-smelling mist poured out. Masks on, Ryan ordered, though their suits were already sealed. Inside, lying on what appeared to be a cushioned surface, was a humanoid figure. Female, based on the body shape, but definitely not human. Her skin was a pale blue with faint patterns that seemed to pulse with dim light. Long, silver-white hair framed a face that was almost human except for the slightly larger eyes and the delicate scale-like texture of her skin, and she was badly injured. Dark fluid that must have been her blood soaked through a torn garment around her midsection. That's a Lumarian, Liz whispered, her voice tight with tension. What's she doing this far into human space? Dying if we don't help, Ryan replied, already moving toward the injured alien. His medical scanner was having trouble reading her vital signs, but he didn't need technology to see she was in critical condition. We should call this in first, Pete said, raising his communicator. Command needs to know we found a Lumarian. Ryan knew Pete was right. Relations with the Lumarian Empire were strained, especially since rumors of their missing princes had started circulating. Finding one of their kind in human territory could be politically explosive, but the medic in him couldn't wait. Call it in, but I'm treating her now. He opened his kit and began assessing the wound. As his hands moved over her injury, the alien's eyes suddenly opened. They were deep violet and seemed to glow from within. She gasped and tried to speak, but no sound came out. Instead, Ryan felt something brush against his mind. Sensation he had never experienced before. Help. Please. The voice was in his head, clear as if someone had spoken aloud. Ryan froze. They are coming. Dawn. Warn both worlds. She's telepathic, Ryan said, his voice barely above a whisper. She's communicating with me. Liz stepped back, raising her rifle. That's impossible. Humans aren't supposed to be receptive to Lumarian telepathy. That's why we've never been able to form proper alliances with them. But Ryan could still feel the alien's presence in his mind, growing weaker by the second. Images flashed through. His thoughts: a diplomatic shuttle, strange shadowy ships attacking, an escape pod launching. And beneath it all, a sense of desperate urgency. I need to get her back to the station, Ryan said, already preparing a temporary seal for her wound. She has important information. Command says to secure the pod and wait for the containment team, Pete said, lowering his communicator. They'll be here in 6 hours, Ryan looked at the injured alien. She doesn't have 6 hours, a decision crystallized in his mind. One that might end his career or worse. But he couldn't ignore what he had seen in those mental images. Something bigger than human Lumarian politics was happening. Help me get her on the stretcher, he told Pete and Liz. I'm taking her back regardless of orders. To his surprise, they didn't argue. Together, they carefully moved the alien onto the portable stretcher. As they lifted her, something fell from a pocket in her torn clothing, a small medallion with intricate patterns that matched the fading lights on her skin. Ryan picked it up and tucked it safely away. As he did, another flash of images came to him: a grand palace, a tall male Lumarian with elaborate light patterns across his skin, and overwhelming feelings of loss and love. Who are you? Ryan whispered to the unconscious alien. Back at the station, Ryan worked frantically to stabilize his patient. He had to improvise, using what little information existed about Lumarian physiology and adapting human medical techniques. Kate stood watching from the doorway of the medical bay, her expression grim. Command wants her transferred to Central as soon as she's stable enough to move, she said. And they want you on the transport with her. Ryan nodded without looking up. She was trying to tell me something. Something about a threat to both our species. Collins, Kate's voice softened. Be careful. Getting emotionally involved with an alien diplomatic incident isn't going to help your record. As if in response to their conversation, the alien's eyes fluttered open again. This time, her gaze locked directly onto Ryan's, and he felt the telepathic connection strengthened. My name is Lyra. My father is King Xerix of Lumaria, and we are all in grave danger. Ryan stared at the alien princess in shock. His hands froze over the medical equipment as her words echoed in his mind. Princess Lyra, the missing daughter of the Lumarian king whose disappearance had nearly pushed their species to war with humanity? You're the princess? He whispered, though he knew she could hear his thoughts. Lyra's luminescent patterns flickered weakly across her blue skin. Yes, I must reach my father before it's too late. Command's transport will be here in 12 hours, Ryan said. They'll take you to Central Station. From there, no. The force of her mental voice made Ryan wince. They must not take me. The ones who attacked my shuttle have agents everywhere. I've seen them in your people's minds while I drifted near your outposts. They want war between our species. Ryan glanced toward the door. Kate had left, but he knew she would be back soon with more questions. The containment team would arrive from Central even sooner. Who attacked you? He asked quietly, continuing to treat her wound. The bleeding had stopped, but she remained dangerously weak. Images flashed through his mind, shadowy ships with strange, shifting forms, creatures that seemed to be made of darkness itself. They call themselves the Void Reavers. They exist between spaces. They feed on conflict and death. They have been manipulating both our peoples for years. Ryan shuddered as more images came. Colonies destroyed, evidence planted to blame Lumarians or humans. Whispers in the ears of leaders pushing for conflict. Why can I hear you? Ryan asked. Humans aren't supposed to be receptive to Lumarian telepathy. Lyra's violet eyes studied him. You are different. Your mind was broken open. I see the memories of the attack on your medical station. The trauma created pathways in your mind that most humans don't have. Ryan felt cold. His PTSD, the nightmares, the flashbacks had somehow made him receptive to alien telepathy. It was both unsettling and strangely comforting to have someone see the full truth of his experiences. We must leave, Lyra insisted. Together, I need to reach my father before the mourning ceremony. Mourning ceremony? When my people officially declare me dead. Once completed, the war faction will push my father to blame humanity. The Void Reavers want this. They've been working toward it for years. Ryan ran a hand through his hair, weighing his options. Helping an alien prince's escape would end his career at best, land him in prison at worst. But if she was right about this threat? The shuttle bay has a scout ship, he said finally. Small, fast, minimal weapons. It's designed for planetary surveys. It will be enough. A soft chime from his medical scanner indicated that Lyra's vital signs were stabilizing. The treatment was working, but she was still weak. You need at least a day of rest before you can travel, Ryan told her. We don't have a day. She was right. Ryan could hear footsteps in the corridor outside. Kate returning with security, probably. He made his decision. Can you walk? With help. Ryan quickly gathered essential medical supplies and helped Lyra to her feet. She was taller than he expected, nearly 6.5 feet, but light for her size. Her arm went around his shoulders, and he felt a strange tingling where their skin made contact. This way, he thought, testing their connection. To his surprise, she nodded in response. They slipped out through the back door of the medical bay and into the service corridor. Ryan had memorized the patrol schedules during his time at the station, a habit from his combat days. They had 7 minutes to reach the shuttle bay before the next security sweep. Why do you trust me? Ryan asked as they moved through the dimly lit corridor. I've been in your mind, she replied simply. I know your heart. They reached the shuttle bay without being spotted. The scout ship sat in its berth, fueled and ready as it always was for emergencies. Ryan helped Lyra inside and settled her in the co-pilot's seat before taking the controls. I need to override the launch protocols, he explained. fingers moving across the control panel. "It'll trigger alarms, so we'll have to be quick." Lyra placed her hand over his. "Let me help." A surge of energy flowed from her into the ship's systems. The controls lit up, and the engines hummed to life without triggering any alarms. "How did you—" "My people's connection to technology is different from yours. We can communicate with it directly." The bay doors began to open, responding to Lyra's silent command. Ryan guided the ship forward, out into the open air of the moon colony. Within moments, they were accelerating toward the upper atmosphere. "They'll be after us soon," Ryan said, checking the scanner. Sure enough, alarm signals were already lighting up from the base. "Set course for the Vex Nebula," Lyra directed. "We can use the radiation fields to mask our signature." Ryan programmed the coordinates. As the ship broke free of the moon's gravity, he felt the weight of what he had just done settle over him. He was now a fugitive, fleeing with an alien princess to prevent an interstellar war against an enemy most people didn't even know existed. "I hope you're right about all this," he said. "So, do I?" 3 days later, their small ship drifted at the edge of the Vex Nebula. The swirling clouds of colorful gas provided cover from both human and Lumarian patrols, but their fuel reserves were running dangerously low. Lyra had grown stronger each day. The patterns of light beneath her skin now pulsed with steady rhythm, and she moved about the ship with grace. She spent hours teaching Ryan to better control their telepathic connection, helping him build mental shields to protect himself. "We'll need to stop for supplies," Ryan said, looking at their dwindling resources. "There's a trading post at Helios Station. It's neutral territory." Lyra nodded, her silver-white hair floating gently in the low gravity they maintained to conserve power. "It's risky, but necessary." As they approached Helios Station, Ryan activated the ship's disguise protocols, making it appear as a standard merchant vessel. The station granted them docking permission without question, another sign of how little security existed on the frontier. "Stay here," Ryan told Lyra. "Your appearance would attract too much attention." "Be careful," she responded. "Remember what I showed you about sensing deception?" Ryan nodded. The mental techniques Lyra had taught him were strange but effective. He could now detect subtle shifts in the emotional energy around him, not true telepathy, but a heightened awareness that bordered on it. He moved through the crowded trading post, gathering supplies and listening to conversations around him. Rumors of increased tensions between humans and Lumarians filled the station. Some spoke of attacks on human colonies blamed on Lumarian forces. Others whispered about Lumarian ships destroyed by human weapons. As Ryan waited for a fuel cell transfer, he noticed a group of traders huddled around a news display. The image showed a human colony in ruins, buildings burning. The reporter claimed it was a Lumarian attack, the worst yet. "Happened just yesterday," a trader was saying. "New Washington colony, thousands dead." Ryan felt cold. New Washington was less than a day's journey from their position. "Any survivors?" he asked, trying to sound casual. The trader shook his head. "Total destruction. The Lumarians are finally showing their true colors." Back at the ship, Ryan shared what he had learned with Lyra. Her reaction was immediate and intense. "We must go there," she insisted. "If this was truly a Lumarian attack, my father would have informed me through our family bond. This must be the work of the Void Reavers." "It's too dangerous," Ryan argued. "Every patrol in the sector will be heading there." "Which is why we must go now, before the evidence is gone." Ryan knew she was right. If they could prove this attack was not carried out by Lumarians, they might have a chance to stop the war before it began. As they approached New Washington colony, Ryan's military training took over. He kept their ship low, using the planet's magnetic fields to avoid detection. The colony came into view, a scene of utter devastation. "Land there," Lyra directed, pointing to a clearing near what had been the colony's main building. As they stepped out onto the ruined world, Ryan felt Lyra stiffen beside him. Her violet eyes widened and the patterns on her skin flashed with alarm. "They're still here," she whispered in his mind. "The Void Reavers. They're watching us." Ryan instinctively reached for the pulse pistol at his hip as Lyra's warning echoed in his mind. His eyes scanned the ruins around them, seeing nothing but destruction. "Where?" He whispered. Everywhere, the shadows. They're watching. Ryan couldn't see what Lyra sensed, but he had learned to trust her abilities. They moved carefully through the devastated colony, weapons ready. What had once been a thriving settlement of 5,000 people was now a graveyard of broken buildings and scattered debris. This doesn't make sense, Ryan said, examining a collapsed wall. These blast patterns, they're consistent with Lumarian weapons, but something's off. Lyra knelt beside him, her slender blue fingers tracing the scorched metal. The energy signature is a perfect copy, but it lacks the resonance pattern that all Lumarian weapons leave behind. It's like someone studied our technology and made an exact replica, but missed the spiritual component. Spiritual component? All Lumarian technology carries a trace of its creator's life energy. It's something that can't be duplicated. As they moved deeper into the colony, Ryan used his medical scanner to check for survivors. There were none, but what he found instead was more disturbing. These people didn't die in the attack, he said, examining the readings from a body they discovered. They were already dead, hours before at least. How do you know? The tissue degradation pattern. I've seen enough combat deaths to know the difference. He pointed to his readings. They were killed, then arranged to look like they died during an attack. A chill ran through both of them as the implications became clear. This entire scene had been staged, a false flag operation designed to push humans and Lumarians into full-scale war. Lyra suddenly gripped Ryan's arm, her violet eyes wide. We need to leave, now. The urgency in her mental voice propelled Ryan into action. They ran back toward their ship, no longer concerned about stealth. As they reached the clearing, Ryan saw what had alarmed Lyra. The air around their ship seemed to ripple and distort. Dark, shadowy forms moved around it, not quite solid, not quite vapor. They had no clear shape, shifting and flowing like living darkness. Void Reavers, Ryan breathed. They found us. One of the shadow creatures turned toward them, revealing what might have been a face, a swirling vortex of deeper darkness with points of cold light where eyes might be. It made no sound, but Ryan felt an overwhelming sense of malice radiating from it. Lyra raised her hand and a pulse of bright energy shot from her palm toward the creature. It shrieked, a sound that existed only in their minds, and retreated. You didn't tell me you could. Do that, Ryan said, raising his pulse pistol and firing at another shadow. It drains me. I can't do it many times. The creatures swarmed toward them, moving faster than Ryan expected. He fired repeatedly, each shot dispersing a shadow temporarily before it reformed. Lyra sent out 2 more energy pulses, each weaker than the last. They were being surrounded. Ryan grabbed Lyra's hand and pulled her toward a fallen structure that might provide cover. As they ran, he felt something cold brush against his back. Pain shot through his body, and memories of the attack on Medical Station Bravo flooded his mind. His worst nightmares brought to the surface. They feed on fear and pain. Lyra's voice cut through the flashback. Focus on me. On our connection. Ryan forced himself to concentrate on the warm presence of Lyra's mind linked to his. The flashback receded, and he found himself crouched behind a fallen wall with Lyra beside him. We need to reach the ship, he said, checking. How many charges remained in his weapon? Not enough. Lyra looked pale, the patterns of light beneath her skin dimming. I have an idea, but I need your help. Our connection is stronger than it should be. If we combine our abilities, we might be able to create a shield. I don't have abilities, Ryan protested. You do. Your mind can channel energy in ways most humans can't. I've seen it. She took his hands in hers. Trust me. Close your eyes. Picture light flowing between us, around us. Ryan did as she asked, feeling somewhat foolish until he sensed something change. A warmth spread from where their hands joined, moving up his arms and throughout his body. When he opened his eyes, he gasped. A dome of soft, blue-white light surrounded them, pulsing gently. Outside, the shadow creatures pressed against it but couldn't pass through. How are we doing this? Ryan asked, amazed. Together, Lyra replied simply. Now we move to the ship, slowly. Keep picturing the shield. They rose and began walking toward their vessel, maintaining the protective bubble around them. Each step was difficult, as if they were moving through thick mud. Ryan could feel energy draining from him with every moment they maintained the shield. The Void Reavers followed, clawing at the light barrier. Whispers filled Ryan's mind, promises. Threats, attempts to break his concentration. He focused harder on Lyra, on their shared purpose. After what seemed like hours but was probably only minutes, they reached the ship. As Lyra placed her hand on the entry panel, Ryan felt his strength failing. The shield flickered. "Hurry!" he gasped. The door slid open and they tumbled inside. Ryan slammed his hand on the emergency closure control, and the door sealed shut just as the shield collapsed. Shadow tendrils tried to squeeze through the narrowing gap but were cut off as the door locked into place. Ryan dragged himself to the pilot's seat and fired up the engines. The ship shuddered as the Void Reavers attacked its hull. "They're trying to prevent our takeoff," he said, hands flying across the controls. Lyra placed her palms on the ship's console. "I'll give the engines more power." The lights in the cabin dimmed as Lyra redirected energy to the propulsion systems. With a lurch, the ship broke free of the ground and shot upward. The shadow creatures fell away as they accelerated into the upper atmosphere. Only when they reached orbit did Ryan allow himself to relax slightly. Beside him, Lyra slumped in her seat, exhausted. "Are you okay?" he asked, reaching for his medical scanner. "Weak, but I'll recover." "That took ... more than I expected. What were those things? I mean, I know you called them Void Reavers, but what are they really?" "An ancient species that lives between dimensions. They feed on conflict and death. The more violent, the more sustenance they receive. A war between our peoples would be a feast that could sustain them for centuries." Ryan set course for Lumarian space. According to Lyra, they had less than 2 days to reach her homeworld before the morning ceremony would make war inevitable. "We have proof now," Ryan said. "We can show both sides what really happened, if they'll listen," Lyra replied. "The Void Reavers have been whispering in ears for years. They have agents and influence in both governments." As if to confirm her words, the ship's communication system suddenly activated. A message from Central Command scrolled across the screen, declaring Ryan Collins a traitor to humanity, accused of kidnapping a Lumarian royal and attacking New Washington Colony. At the same time, a Lumarian broadcast that Lyra translated revealed that she was being portrayed as dead, with humans blamed for her murder. "They're trying to cut off all our options," Ryan said grimly. Lyra's hand found his. "We still have each other. And now we have seen our enemy's true form." Ryan nodded, feeling the strength of their connection. Something had changed between them during the battle. Their minds had grown even more intertwined. He could sense her thoughts without her actively projecting them, and she seemed to know his intentions before he voiced them. As the ship accelerated toward Lumarian space, Ryan noticed something strange. Faint patterns of light, similar to Lyra's bioluminescence but much fainter, had begun to appear on his own skin. "It's our bond," Lyra explained when she noticed his surprise. "It's changing both of us." Ryan stared at the subtle glow beneath his skin. He didn't know what it meant for his future, but he knew one thing for certain: they would face it together. The royal palace of Lumaria gleamed in the light of twin suns as Ryan and Lyra's ship approached. Tall crystal towers rose from the center of a circular city, each structure pulsing with soft bioluminescence. Under different circumstances, Ryan would have been awestruck by the beauty. Now he only felt anxiety. "Will they shoot us down?" he asked as they entered Lumarian airspace. "Not while I'm broadcasting the royal signal," Lyra replied. Her fingers danced across the control panel, sending pulses of light into the ship's communication array. "But they will be confused and suspicious." True. To her words, they were soon surrounded by sleek Lumarian fighter ships. No weapons fired, but the message was clear: they were being escorted rather than welcomed. "Are we too late?" Ryan asked, noting the somber atmosphere that seemed to hang over the city below. The morning ceremony begins at sunset. "We have very little time." Their ship was directed to land on a platform extending from the central palace tower. As they touched Down, Ryan saw dozens of guards forming a perimeter around their vessel. "Weapons drawn, stay close to me," Lyra instructed as they prepared to exit. "My father will be in the Grand Hall, preparing for the ceremony." The ship's door opened and Lyra stepped out first. A collective gasp rose from the gathered guards. The patterns on their skin flashed with shock and disbelief. "Princess Lyra." One of them said aloud, his voice breaking. Lyra stood tall, her royal bearing evident in every line of her body. "Take me to my father immediately." The guards hesitated when Ryan emerged behind her. Their light patterns shifted to alarm and hostility. "The human is under my protection," Lyra said firmly, speaking aloud for Ryan's benefit. "He saved my life. Twice." After a moment of uncertainty, the lead guard nodded and motioned for them to follow. They were led through crystal corridors that hummed with energy. Lumarians they passed stopped and stared, many falling to their knees in shock at seeing their princes alive. "They thought I was truly gone." Lyra's mental voice was tinged with sadness. Ryan walked half a step behind her, acutely aware of the stares directed at him. The patterns on his skin had grown more noticeable during their journey, not as bright as a true Lumarian's, but visible enough to draw curious and sometimes fearful looks. They reached a massive doorway that pulsed with complex patterns of light. Before the guards could announce them, Lyra placed her hand on the door. It dissolved at her touch, revealing the grand hall beyond. The hall was filled with hundreds of Lumarians, all dressed in formal attire that shimmered with subdued light. Patterns. At the far end, on a raised platform, stood a tall figure that Ryan instantly recognized as King Xerix, even from a distance. The resemblance to Lyra was clear. The king was speaking, his voice resonant and sorrowful. When Lyra stepped into the hall, the words died in his throat as his eyes found his daughter. For a moment, the entire hall was frozen in silence. "Father," Lyra said aloud, her voice carrying across the vast space. The light patterns across King Xerix's skin exploded with brilliance, shifting from deep blue to blinding white. He moved with surprising speed for his size, covering the distance between them in seconds. "Lyra," he breathed, reaching out but stopping just short of touching her, as if afraid she might vanish. "Is it truly you?" "It is, father." The king embraced his daughter then, and the hall erupted in gasps and exclamations. The patterns of light throughout the room pulsed in sync with the king's joy, creating a dazzling display. Only when the initial shock passed did Xerix notice Ryan. His expression shifted instantly to suspicion. "You bring a human to our sacred hall?" he asked Lyra, his voice cooling. "This is Ryan Collins," Lyra said firmly. "Without him, I would not be here. And without him, we cannot save our peoples from the true enemy." Before Xerix could respond, a commotion broke out near the main doors. A group of Lumarians pushed their way into the hall, led by a figure Ryan recognized from Lyra's Memories Council member Vex, leader of the War faction. "My king," Vex called out, his skin flashing with urgent patterns. "Human warships have entered our system. They claim we have taken one of their officers hostage." All eyes turned to Ryan. The atmosphere in the hall shifted instantly from joy to tension. "We have little time," Lyra said quickly. "Father, I must show you what we've discovered." She stepped forward and placed her hands on either side of the king's face, a formal gesture that Ryan understood was used for the deepest form of telepathic sharing among Lumarians. The king's eyes widened as Lyra transferred her memories and knowledge directly to him. When she stepped back, Xerix looked shaken. "The Void Reavers," he whispered. "I thought they were only legends." "They are real," Ryan said, speaking for the first time since entering the hall. "And they've been manipulating both our species toward war." Vex pushed forward. "This is human deception. They attack our colonies, kill our people, and now bring a spy into our sacred hall." "He is no spy," Lyra said. "Show them, Ryan." Ryan hesitated, then rolled up his sleeve to reveal the patterns of light that now covered much of his arm. A murmur ran through the crowd. "Impossible," Vex hissed. "No human can carry the light." "This one can," Xerix said, studying Ryan with new interest. "Because my daughter has shared her essence with him." Lyra nodded. Our minds are linked in a way never before seen between our species. Through this bond, we fought the Void Reavers. Together, as if triggered by her words, the light in the hall suddenly dimmed. Shadows deepened in the corners, moving in ways that shadows should not. "They're here," Ryan said. Drawing his pulse pistol, the shadows coalesced into familiar forms, the swirling darkness of the Void Reavers. They emerged from every corner of the hall, surrounding the gathered Lumarians. Panic erupted as the creatures attacked. Lumarian guards fired energy weapons, but most shots passed harmlessly through the shadowy forms. Ryan's pulse pistol proved more effective, disrupting the Reavers' cohesion temporarily. "They feed on fear," Ryan shouted to the king. "Tell your people to focus on their light." King Xerx's voice boomed across the hall, instructing his people. The Lumarians responded, the patterns on their skin brightening as they focused their mental energy. Lyra grabbed Ryan's hand. Like before, together they combined their energies, creating a shield of light that expanded outward. Where it touched the Void Reavers, they shrieked and retreated. King Xerx added his considerable power to theirs, strengthening the effect. The shadows were being pushed back when a familiar figure stepped through the Chaos Marin, the king's trusted advisor, but something was wrong. His movements were jerky, unnatural, and his skin patterns had gone dark. "He's been taken," Lyra gasped. "The Reavers are using him." Marin raised a weapon aimed directly at King Xerx. Ryan didn't hesitate. He threw himself forward, knocking the king aside as the weapon discharged. Pain flared in Ryan's shoulder as the energy blast caught him instead of its intended target. Through their connection, Lyra felt Ryan's pain as her own. Her scream of rage and anguish unleashed a wave of pure energy that swept through the hall. Where it touched the Void Reavers, they dissolved into nothingness. Where it touched Marin, it forced the controlling entity out of his body, revealing the true form of a Void Reaver leader. The creature hovered before them, more solid than its minions, with a face that was almost skull-like within its swirling darkness. "You cannot stop what is coming," it said, its voice like ice in their minds. "Our kind has fed on the conflicts of lesser beings for millennia." "Not anymore," Lyra said, her hand still joined with Ryan's. Together, they focused the combined energy of every Lumarian in the hall into a single, concentrated beam of light that struck the Reaver leader. It writhed and shrieked before collapsing into itself and vanishing in the silence that followed. Ryan sagged against Lyra, weakened by his injury and the energy he had expended. King Xerx stepped forward, supporting him from the other side. "You saved my life," the king said, wonder in his voice. "A human warrior saved the king of Lumaria." "He saved all of us," Lyra corrected gently. The king looked at the patterns of light now pulsing across, Ryan's skin in perfect harmony with his daughter's. "The ancient texts speak of the warrior of light who would come from beyond the stars," he said thoughtfully. "One who would bridge the gap between worlds and drive back the darkness," Ryan smiled weakly. "I'm just a medic who was in the right place at the right time." "You are far more than that now," Xerx replied. He turned to address the assembled Lumarians. "Today we have witnessed the impossible, a human who carries our light. Today we have faced an ancient enemy and prevailed through unity." He raised his voice further. "Contact the human fleet. Tell them their officer is here as an honored guest, and invite their leaders to join us for a historic meeting." As the pain in his shoulder subsided, Ryan felt something new through his connection with Lyra Hope. Not just hers, but radiating from every Lumarian in the hall. And somewhere, at the edges of his enhanced awareness, he sensed surprise and curiosity from the humans in the approaching fleet. "Will they listen?" he asked quietly. Lyra's hand tightened around his. "They will, because now we can show them the truth." Together, the patterns of light on Ryan's skin brightened, matching the glow of Lyra's. In that moment, he knew that, whatever came next,